And I think, we were fortunate enough to have that open space there at the university and have those types of conversations, with guest speakers that will come in to talk about science, to talk about like different topics that, we would think that are so separate from religion or separate from the belief of God. But I think sometimes, those strengthen our understanding of God. Hello, everyone. This is Out of the Box Podcast, where Steele and I, your host, talk about outside of the box ideas. Today, we have a pretty awesome topic. It's, does God exist? And a little bit about the insights that we have. We are both Christian, and so we're excited to talk about, our perspectives, and hopefully this is an unbiased talk that we can show, not only our personal experiences, but also some scientific research that we've done ourselves. So I know, Steele, if you want to kind of kick it off, just give him some context about what you have done, maybe some of the projects that you have behind this topic.
Yeah, I'll do a little quick snippet to save us some time so we can dive into some of those philosophical questions. But basically, I've been writing this book. I didn't plan on it at all. It just started as a project that was for fun because when I was in my undergrad at St. Mary's University in San Antonio, I feel like it really helped strengthen my faith because I feel like at that point in my life, I was maybe getting farther away from church, but my friends there kind of helped me brought me back just being in that environment. And sophomore year, basically the core curriculum at the university is philosophy. And the first philosophy course I took was freshman year. And that one really opened my mind up to philosophy for the first time. And it got me really interested in it. And we had to do these discussion posts every week, a certain way to practice philosophical arguments and along with other students and stuff. And that I think really got me interested in that, in philosophical debate and arguing things with logic and just basic philosophy, And so I was like, well, one summer I was like, wouldn't that be interesting if I tried to kind of apply all these philosophical skills and arguing techniques to God, to my own belief in God, just to see what would happen, to see where I can go with it. And so I started doing that on my own, just kind of writing notes and writing stuff on Microsoft Word. And then it turned into something bigger because then I started doing research and then got really deep into human consciousness and what human consciousness even is. And there's so many definitions of human consciousness. It's really fascinating.
That's something I'm interested in kind of delving in maybe a little bit later. The unconscious mind and, what that has to do with the existence of God, right? Or at least our ability to perceive, our concept of God.
Yeah, I'll let you in 1 second. I'm just going to do something.
All right. So while Steele takes a quick break, I wanted to share a little bit about my experience and a little bit about my context. So as a Christian, I'm cradle Catholic, grew up as a Christian all my life. And I've been doing this, ever since I was little. I've always been part of the Christian community. My family always went to church, different things like that. So I've always had the idea of God in my life. But, I think in college is usually when we kind of fight that idea and, begin to ask questions, because it's unfortunate that when we're younger, a lot of people say, well, don't ask questions, don't question the process, don't question what it is, don't question God, But I think it's normal to question just because it gets you to a deeper understanding of what you actually believe. It's in the contrary, it's doing a benefit to question, and it's not a threat. It's not a going against anyone's beliefs to question. It's just basically looking at it in a different perspective. I think kids are so smart. They have such great questions. But then once we get to adulthood, we've been told not to question things so much that we forget how good questions are. And I actually have a quote here that I wrote the other day. It says, questions are the start to curiosity. Curiosity is the start of an adventure. And I really think, faith in itself is an adventure. There's its ups and downs. There's its good moments and its bad moments. There's the seeking, the looking around, the asking. And so that's why I think questions in itself do lead to a higher and better understanding, in this case, of God and who he is and what he plays in our day-to-day life.
Yeah, I really like what you said about not being afraid to ask questions, and kind of like what you were saying of children being discouraged from asking questions. Because I've kind of seen that, or I've seen it portrayed in like movies and stuff. And I don't know if the movies are exaggerating, because I know that times were like really different back then too. And when the church was more strict on certain things, I guess, or like, like I would see like a movie like showing like Sunday school, and like a priest or somebody works there's like criticizing the child for asking questions about God, and that probably did happen quite often back then, and my optimistic self is like, hopefully now it's less that way. At least that was my experience with St. Mary's. Like, I got more of an idea of like, it's okay to ask questions, and they kind of encourage you to explore questions about God instead of discouraging it. And I'm sure it depends on the environment too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the healthy ways, right? To have conversations when both sides of the platforms, whether you believe or don't believe, have that open space to not judge each other for what one believes, but mainly to understand what the concepts and the things that they're saying, if they make sense, and have a congruent sense of what's going on, right? Specifically in the topic. And I think, we were fortunate enough to have that open space there at the university, and have those types of conversations, with guest speakers that will come in to talk about science, to talk about like different topics that, we would think that are so separate from religion or separate from the belief of God. But I think sometimes, those strengthen our understanding of God, right? Neurology, science, all that, mathematics, music, all that, I think in a way brings back to its origin, the creation. And I think that's if there is a creation, in effect, there is a creator, right? And I think that's one of the ideas that that's been a little bit, I guess, debated over years, right? Because a lot of scientists have come up with the idea that of a self-creating universe, right? That in itself, it just created itself, right? And in our idea, the idea of God, is the creator, right? So I think that's where the contradiction is. Some people are saying that it was self-created, the universe, and then another one is that there was a creator, there was a person or a being that actually made all of this in our earth, in our universe, right? And so I think that's probably a good start if you want to maybe touch up a little bit on that idea still with what you have in your book as well.
Yeah. And the book itself has, I mean, I didn't get to finish, but like it started from writing and then it turned into a huge, long book, 100 or so pages long, with various topics. One of which that you're talking about is, can we attribute the universe to being created by a creator, or to it being self-made, as the I guess we could call naturalists propose. Or there's so many different labels for everything. I guess say naturalists, I guess say biologists, scientists, but then it's like not all scientists are atheists, not all scientists are this, So that's something that's
that's true. But and as we go, if you want to explain some of the jargon that you mentioned,
definitely.
and I'll keep you accountable if maybe there's some word that might be foreign to the listeners.
Right. Yeah. So the creation of the universe. My struggle with that one is, I can find a lot of information on like like the fine tuning of the universe. I'm sure you've probably heard of that argument, how everything is so specifically fine tuned that if something was even off by a decimal, then a lot of the things we see now wouldn't exist. The problem like that I struggle with is because the atheist argument to that is that you're just saying the God of the gaps, and the God of the gaps is saying that you're just seeing these gaps in the universe. Like, for example, how do you explain life coming from non-life, and you're just using these gaps that exist in nature and adding God to it. And that's what that argument is. And I'm not going to lie, it's a challenging argument to, to debate. At least for me, it is.
So do you mean that? Yeah. Do you mean that? What is the God of gaps? I quite didn't understand.
Yeah. So concept. the God of the gaps. So think of gaps like holes in our understanding of the universe. So one hole would be why does the universe exist? Like, I guess if you kind of look at it in perspective of like, if we assume
okay, so like the questions that we don't quite know the answer for,
right?
We can just defer like, okay, that was God,
right? And basically, the atheist counter argument to that is, to us being Christians, claiming that God created the universe is, well, you're just doing the God of the gaps. You're just saying the universe exists because God, without any other, I guess, explanation. And I admit that it's a challenging, it's a challenging counter argument, and it's interesting to like think about,
Yeah, but my question still is, for those, for those who don't believe or maybe bring up that argument, then why does that happen, right? And I think it's whenever there's a gray area, I guess, like how you said, the gaps, whenever there's a gray area, it's hard to explain because we haven't come to the evolution, I guess, in our way of thinking to actually be able to attribute that to a certain scientific law or anything like that. And so
right.
I guess for believers, it's easy just to refer to God as making that event happen, right? And I can see, like how I guess for those non-believers, how woo-woo that can sound to them, in the way of understanding God. But I think it's focusing too little on that detail, right? And for sure, and I think it's a great argument to bring up, but at the end of the day, okay, well, yes, let's say, those gaps, we can attribute them to God, right? But even if they weren't, attributed to God, then how do you explain those things,
Yeah, you still
like it's still like up in the air.
You're saying. So you're saying like kind of like it's still, the problem is still there. Like just saying that, oh, you're just using the God of the gaps, it doesn't get rid of the problem that the Christians saying that there's no
there's still events that are not explained by science in itself.
And like even the creation of life itself from non-life is extremely complicated. People don't realize how complicated it is. Like scientists have been able to pinpoint it down to specific points in time of like DNA and RNA construction, but they can only go so far deconstructing that, even, and even that's kind of limited. But I don't want to claim to be an expert either, come off that way. Like I'm not a biologist, but just the stuff that I've read, I think is fascinating. But another topic we could talk about that kind of ties into this, well, why would you say it's God? Because then another argument that is made is that, well, there's 12 other religions. And then on top of that, there's other religions that people have also created. There's Greek mythology, there's Zeus and all that. And then there's new stuff like Satanism, Pastafarianism. Pastafarianism is basically kind of a parody, though it doesn't really count.
Yeah.
Jedi, turn Jedi into a religion. But it's like, you only go so far
There's
on
so
that,
many gods. Like,
right?
which god are we talking about? And
All
I
right. And
guess
dude, you know
it's
what's
more.
fascinating? I figured out that a lot of that, like some religions like Buddhism, I believe, they don't even believe in God. They're actually an atheistic religion. They just believe in and correct me if I'm wrong,
In
but
like nirvana and stuff.
as I understand it, it's like about energy and stuff like that. But they don't believe in a creator of the universe. So that, to me, that doesn't count. Like, that's not a competition for Christianity because they don't even believe in God to begin with. I'm not saying it's the same thing as atheism, but it's atheistic in nature. And the Christian God is the God that me and you believe in, Jesus. That's what makes our religion unique. And then there's the Abrahamic God that Judaism believes in. Jews believe in, they still believe in the Abrahamic God of the Old Testament that me and you also believe in. The only difference is they just don't believe in the New Testament. They don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. They may even acknowledge, and some atheists and historians even acknowledge that Jesus was probably a real person and a great philosopher. Someone said, was it C.S. Lewis, who said either Jesus is a brilliant genius or he's a madman who's crazy. But
Yeah.
they still acknowledge that he existed as a human being. It's just the difference is they don't know, they don't believe, they don't go to our level where we believe that he was the Son of God, he is a divine being. So yeah, Judaism believes in the same Abrahamic God that we as Christians believe. And then there's some other branches of that who also believe in the Abrahamic God, like Islam religions and stuff like that. But then I think the one religion that you could say, okay, here's some competition is Hinduism of India, because they believe that there's several gods. They believe in polytheism, that there's like hundreds of gods. And it's like, okay. But my
But
argument is like,
if you stop to think about and look at all the gods that they have,
yeah,
they represent different forces of nature
right.
in our world, right? Like, the god of fire, the god of rain, these different gods that they pray to, for different things to happen in the world, right?
And the
For
way I see
different
it,
forces.
I see a flaw, and I don't know. Let's see if you can get this too. Like the flaw in polytheism. Like, what do you think the flaw would be in believing in many gods?
Well, I mean, I guess the first one that comes to mind is, if you're praying to different gods, then, are you just having different relationships with different gods, and maybe one of them you're leaving behind, and so that God might get mad at you for not praying to them as much as the other gods? Or I guess, I think, how does that work, if you attribute the different events in life to different gods? It's, I guess I'm thinking about it more in a human perspective, like relationship wise, the way that we see the Christianic God, right? The relationship that we have, as humans to a divine creator. If you have several divine creators or
Yeah,
divine,
exactly. That's my point.
yeah, right.
To
Like,
me, it's more irrational to believe that there's more than one creator than to believe in one creator, because then you get the chicken or egg argument. Well, then if two creators, even two, even three, created the universe, then which creator created that creator, and which creator came before the other creator? But then I guess you could argue, well, they've always existed since the dawn of time. Like, I believe that about God, about the one God that we believe in, is that God has existed outside time, so therefore he's always that. That's what they mean by eternal. People can't grasp what they mean by eternal, but it's like he's just existed outside of the four
of
dimensions of
time.
time and space that we live in. And
Yeah.
there are dimensions outside the fourth dimension of time. Like,
And
science,
let's talk
string
about that a
theory.
little bit, because
String
I,
theory.
I, I really I think we've talked about the different dimensions and the possibility of that existing, which I just find fascinating, because once you start living, outside of the fourth dimension, which is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's time, right?
Right.
Once you live outside of time, that's how you can have omnipresence. You can be at different points in different times of people's lives, because you live outside of time, right?
Right. Exactly, dude. I
And
can talk
essentially when
so
we pray,
much about that.
those prayers, the reason why, they're so powerful is because they reach in a way outside of time. They go into this area, and I don't want to sound too woo woo for those just listening to us, but if it's reaching the creator, if our prayers are actually reaching the creator and the creator lives outside of time, then our prayers are going outside of time as well.
Yeah. Well, and even if you don't believe in God, the thing about prayer is prayer can have this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy thing. So you can still argue that prayer is a form of meditation, and some people acknowledge it to be that kind of like self-meditation, to where you're praying for these things that you want to change about yourself and maybe other people, depending on what you're praying about. And it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you're like, if you think a certain way and you start believing a certain way, then you're going to act that way, and the world around you is going to respond in the same way, kind of. And it's a chain reaction. But yeah, dude,
Yeah.
it's pretty
But
interesting.
I wanted to get your perspective on dimensions, the different dimensions. What have you researched
Yeah,
about
the more honestly, the more I've dived into that, the more I realize I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, and I find that I'm out of my reach, if that makes sense. Like when I initially got into it, I was like, okay, that's really cool. So Albert Einstein believed that there's a fourth dimension of time that our physical dimension is in, and that if you go outside, and then other people would add to that and say, okay, so if you go outside this fourth dimension of time into, like, I guess a fifth dimension or whatever, then that means you exist outside of the beginning and the end of time. So you're literally eternal, technically. That means, philosophically, like speaking, that means you would be able to see all of time laid out in front of you in 3D forever, like everything
and
at once.
and that's just to give people context of what that means. Let's say when you do a drawing, right? That's a two-dimensional, line, right? Let's say you draw a line on paper. That's a two-dimensional line that you can see yourself, right? Because you live in the third dimension, right? In the physical reality. And so, right there and there, you're just seeing a line. But if I lived, right? If I lived in the second dimension, I would just see a dot, right? Because that dot, I'm living inside that second dimension. I just see that continuous dot that's going straight, right?
Right. Exactly.
Until it finishes the drawing, right? Like until it gets to a certain point. But that's all I see, right? And so since we live in the third dimension, we can see the whole line, right? And then if we lived outside of the fourth dimension, which is the one that the time compass, then, like you said, we can see all of time. We live, in the beginning and the end. And I think that's it's such a beautiful thing, because in the Catholic Church, we believe God to be the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end.
Right.
It all started with him, and eventually, if the world does come to an end, it'll end with him, right? And so, or him or her, I don't know what to.
We believe that God is omnipresent, right? And so that means he must see all of time, and that doesn't actually go against contemporary science on the idea of being outside the fourth dimension of time, because if you are, then you're omnipresent, right? Because everything's in front of you. But yeah, that was a really good metaphor. That's I forgot the name of it, but there's a book that was written about that metaphor. You're talking about the lines and how you perceive things differently in different dimensions. Like we perceive time as linear, but in reality, it's probably more complicated than that. Because we're stuck in this third dimension. I guess technically we're in a fourth dimension, right? But if we're outside that, it would radically change the way we view time. It's like we wouldn't be able to handle it, But there's one other thing that I wanted to touch on with you is
almost like a black hole, right? Like,
right.
Outside you yourself, your physical self, would not be able to exist in the outside of time, just because it would happen just like what a black hole does, just mixes things up and moves things around. You would not be able to survive a
Right.
black hole,
Yeah. As a human being.
because time inside a black hole is just constantly moving and changing.
Yeah, it's a mystery. We don't entirely even know. It's like black holes are a mystery, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Called a singularity inside the black hole, which I think is a term that means we don't know what that is. And I'm probably butchering that, but the main thing, though, out of all of this philosophical stuff we've talked about, and that's only just a small portion of the book, but the biggest one for me is the idea of near-death experiences. That's what convinced me personally, freshman year at St. Mary's, when I started reading all these books. And these books are published by doctors. And, people want to argue, well, these people are just making
Like
up
doctors
these stuff,
in what specifically? Like
medical doctors.
medical.
Yeah,
Okay.
medical. Yeah. So I'm like, these people, they're professional. They're medical doctors. They studied biology, and many of them were atheists before, or agnostic before they found out about these near-death experiences. And the common argument from the atheist or agnostic is like, well, they're just making this stuff up so they can make money off the book. And I'm like, well, but they're a medical doctor. That's my counter argument is this: they're a medical doctor. How much more money do
Their
they
reputation
They
is
already
on the
have,
line.
but they're already making a lot of money, though. That's the thing. If you're a doctor, you're already bringing in a lot of money. What's your motivation?
Yeah, you're putting your name on the line.
Yeah, what's your
of, like,
motivation to put out a
credibility.
book? Yeah, credibility too. That's another good point. But like, I'm like, what's their motivation to make more money if they're already making a lot of money, like with the book, So I don't think, I'm not going to completely rule it out, but at the same time, these near-death experiences are fascinating. There's actually been several. There's this one case with a girl who was blind since birth, and she had a near-death experience, and she saw things, in heaven, in this higher dimension. I like to think of heaven as like a higher dimension outside of our dimensions that we know of, to make it more, I guess, contemporary. But it's the same. It means the same thing. It's just different words. Words are always going to change. But that's what I think of it at. And it's fascinating. She was blind since birth. They were arguing, these doctors were saying it just doesn't make sense. How can she, see all this stuff like a tree? She can identify a tree in heaven and all that stuff if she's never seen it her whole life.
You know what? And now, right now, since we're talking about death, and death being one of the doors to actually, come close to divineness and maybe, heaven, right? Made me think, in Jesus, time, when he died, he said he opened salvation for everyone, right? He opened the doors to heaven. And if he did open the doors to heaven, which is higher dimension, right?
Right.
That means that people that were living before who died were just staying in the area of time, right? Like maybe what we consider ghosts, right? That never have the chance to open the door into that higher dimension. So when Jesus died for us, right? In a Christian sense, when Jesus died, he opened the door to that higher dimension. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
Like,
and that's
like our concept
of
like salvation, was that door opening into that higher dimension.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you could do that with a lot of things in the Bible. You could explain like, well, these angels and their meaning is messengers, and so does that mean they're interdimensional beings? And it's like, I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
And I feel like people don't want to, or they just don't think about it, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure there's plenty of do, but that's how I think about it, at least. And then there's certain near-death experiences. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but like basically,
you were saying that the girl saw different things when she was in heaven,
even though she was blind since birth, and she identified things and objects, even though she's never seen them because she's been blind since birth. So that was fascinating. But there was another one where this girl died on the operating table, and she actually, this happened in not just that, but it happened in several cases of near-death experiences, because these doctors did statistical data analysis and stuff, and they collected a lot of data. But there are several people who accurately described these medical procedures without any medical training, like after they woke up after the near-death experience, and because then during the experience of dying, they went up above their body and they could see all of the doctors doing all the stuff. Like one of them was cardiac arrest and were trying to revive someone. And the patient was able to accurately describe, and this wasn't like in recent times. This was like in the 1990s. I could be wrong. 1990s. It was before YouTube and all that, so they wouldn't just watch videos and like, oh, this is how you do it. It's like, no, it wasn't like that. It's like they accurately describe these complicated medical procedures that flabbergasted doctors. The doctors are like, it makes no sense how this patient could accurately describe exactly what happened. There was even a specific case where a patient described things that the surgeon said during the procedure that when she died, supposedly, specific words they said in a song that was playing in the background, because sometimes surgeons listen to music when they're doing surgery. And she gave the exact words they said and the name of the song. And the doctors and nurses were like, what? This makes no sense at all. How did this person do this? You know? And ironically, the person who said that didn't even believe in God before that, but then she started questioning it after, but she couldn't explain it either. But yeah, I don't know if.
And so, if these people have near-death experiences, have they seen God? Have they, you said some of them have seen heaven, the concept of heaven.
They've seen loved ones. There's been some where they saw God as this kind of extremely bright light, and they described the light as very thick, heavy, not like light on earth. Like they said, if they were human in the experience, that the light would literally kill them from the intensity of it, that humans can't handle the light of God. And that the light also comes with emotions. It projects emotions of love and stuff like that onto the person. And it like has weight, which is crazy. And they say the colors are beyond anything on earth, that they can't even be described. And yeah, a lot of stuff like it's fascinating, because my argument is like, if they were just hallucinating all of this, one, how would they describe medical procedures accurately in the specific song and the thing the surgeon said? But also, blind people, how would they be able to see stuff? And also, why would all the near-death experiences have so many similarities between them across the board?
Yeah. Okay, so there is commonalities between.
There are, and it's shocking if you look at the statistics how similar they are. It's like, what? This makes no sense. If I was an atheist, I'd be like, that makes no sense. Like, how do you explain this?
There has to be some truth to it. If different people die, come back, they see the same thing or similar things, or their perception of that other reality is the same, then there must be some sort of truth to it, right?
Exactly, dude. And it's like, and there's another interesting thing is like, they're not exactly the same. Like they're the same in a sense of common themes. So like a light, a dark tunnel to where they go to a light, which I think of that's kind of like going to a portal to another dimension. That's how I look at it, a higher dimension of heaven, because a lot of them start in the dark tunnel and then they go to this light, and maybe the light is the portal. I don't know. Or seeing God, or seeing relatives, or describing medical procedures, or being able to float above your body. Like those are common themes, right? But they're not going to be exactly the same, because they wouldn't be. That's impossible. Even if it's real, it's not going to be the same. Because if 5 people went to New York City, downtown, they would all have a different description of the same area, right? No one describes things exactly the same way, because everyone experiences things in their own way. So that's my argument for that.
Yeah, it's different testimonies of the same event, maybe, but everyone uses their own perception. Right, to describe the event.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we're almost out of time, but I was wondering if you want to touch on kind of your knowledge of it, and maybe talk about the problem of evil, or something that you think we should touch on.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that morality and God, it's something that ever since time, we even say today, what would Jesus do? It's like that morality aspect with religion. It's so mixed together, and I thought it was interesting, because when I was taking a philosophy class, our teacher was telling us that, ethics, should be separated from religion. I thought that was really interesting, because, there's a lot of philosophy behind that, because if God does not exist, like I think it's Kierkegaard said, God does not exist, then everything is possible, which means, evil is possible. You could kill someone, and, other than being a law in humanity society, if I kill someone in the woods, that's completely fine if nobody finds out about it, right? And that's the idea of world without God, right? Because there's no punishment afterwards, or there's no life afterwards. So live right now while you can. And I think it brings us back to a very primitive mentality, right? Very survival concepts. So, why give $5 to the person on the street? If, in your mind, you can use it to buy, something else, right? You earn that money. And so you should use it, to buy food for yourself, for your kid, right? It brings us back to a very self-seeking interest, right? If in reality there is no God, why do things for others, right? Is it could be, it could be still in the self-interest of like, well, if I give, $5 to this person, and it's, let's say, for church, maybe in the future, they'll care for me, if I ever end up losing my job or something like that. Or it could be in that sense, but still the way, it would be very, very hard to really separate, God from morality in a way, just because the existence of God in itself implies that there is, a greater place where he exists, and if we want to gain access to that, we have to believe and follow what he does, which when he came, we believe Jesus to be the God in person, human, in human form. Then he laid out kind of like the pathway to what it means to be a Christian, right? And so a follower of God. And I think that has a lot to do, with how we live our lives. And of course, even in the Bible, it says, should we pay taxes to the Romans? Well, God was not against, completely like the rules that were from man, right? But he's basically saying like, well, pay the Romans what is to the Romans, and God what is to God, right? But I think nowadays we're coming out with so many laws that sometimes, do they really matter? And it's a little laws, but there is some that help to bring order, like having stop signs, of course, right? A stoplight or something like that to keep order in traffic, different stuff like that essentially bring organization into the world. I think that's normal, because in itself, like you said, the problem of evil still exists in the world, right? Hence why, human made laws are to keep partly that evil from happening. But in itself, everything's arbitrary if you stop to think about it. A law, what is a law? Because sometimes, like, for example, let me give you a great example. The other day I was with my girlfriend. We went to the movies, right? To not the movies, but a drive-in movie theater. We were gonna go get some popcorn. There was like some lines that were created, separating the restroom with where you can buy popcorn. So you literally had to go outside of the door and then go in through the other side to get into the area where there was popcorn. But the only thing separating you, where the restrooms were, where I was, to that popcorn area was just some cones.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, well, why have to go around if I can just, step,
but if you
take
do,
a
you get in
step,
trouble.
and I'm already there to buy the popcorn. I don't want to go outside and do that whole thing. And so, it's a gray area, right? I'm not killing anyone. I'm not, and that goes into the idea, well, how big is a sin? If you kill someone or cross the line into going to get popcorn when somebody said,
dude, we could do an entire podcast on that by itself. that idea. That's very true. But I will say,
but I think, for at the end of my think, I guess, morality in itself and the problem of evil, entails that, if there's an evil, there's a good, right?
Right.
There's always a polarity in the world. If you stop to think about it, there's always, where there's light, there's always shadows. Where there is a positive energy, there's always a negative energy, right? That's how batteries work. That's how a lot of things work, and
Right.
a lot of electromagnetic things in this world. And electromagnetic meaning there's, an electricity, a message being sent out, and a magnetic something bringing it in. So there's always like a flow of motion. Even we are electromagnetic beings, and that's why, when somebody gets shocked by lightning, it really harms us, because we are electromagnetic beings. We are conductors. And so there's many things, that we could go down into a rabbit hole with, but
we could do another podcast on moral relativism, which is the new kind of way of seeing morality.
Yeah.
That reminds me of.
That could be the next episode.
Yeah, I'm down. Because, but I'll say this, like, before my last statement, I guess, would be like, going back on what we started in the beginning, because I've talked to atheists and stuff, and I have plenty of friends with different beliefs. So I also see the point of view of, like, not saying that atheists don't have morals just because they don't believe in God. You know what I mean? Like, just because but I also understand the argument of God is the source of morality. At least that's what me and you personally believe as Christians who believe in the Creator. But at the same time, I want to, I guess, make it clear, like, I'm not saying that atheists don't have morals just because they don't believe in God, or they don't believe, I guess, in moral virtues, I guess, because that can be a stereotype sometimes, and like that atheists have no morals or what have you, But yeah,
because there is a lot of philosophers that say, well, maybe morality is innate, just like a mother learns to care for its baby, right? Or, a pack of elephants learn to take care of themselves to protect each other from dangerous animals.
Yeah, dude, we should talk about this on our next podcast, because there is a lot more to say for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that'll be a nice cliffhanger to end the podcast.
That's how we get y'all hooked. We leave on a cliffhanger.
Sounds good, Steele. Well, thank you for coming in today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you are here at the end of the podcast, please subscribe to our channel. We have a lot more coming in these next couple of months and weeks to talk about outside of the box ideas, and hopefully you find this intriguing. If you like this, give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you in the next episode.